What's up, y'all? It's Master Hogan. Today we are talking about wrist mobility. Okay, so how does this differ from wrist flexibility, and how do you work to increase it? So first, the difference in wrist mobility and flexibility is that in mobility, in your wrist, you're able to exert force in different directions or movements of the wrist. So we know that the wrist can articulate this way and all rotate in all directions. Okay, so for mobility versus flexibility would just be being able to move into that range and hold it, say, okay, or something of that sort. And a lot of the times it's passive. So like for a wrist stretch, I could pull down and that's okay, and I can do that. That is the flexibility of my wrist. But actually being able to actively pull my wrist down into that range, and even more, like functionally being able to perform exercises in that range, is the wrist mobility. Okay, so that said, how do we work on increasing it? Well, today I'm going to show you how to progress into the elbow lever. Okay, that's what it's called in the calisthenics and hand balancing community. In the breaking community, we call it the stab. I think some people call it pilot even in there. So I'll show you first, and then I'll talk about the best progressions for it. Okay. This is why it's called stab, because you stab your elbow into your stomach. Okay. So, what is up with that? Well, here's the thing. Obviously it takes flexibility and mobility to even hold that or to work within it, but the beauty of this is that you have to exert force in the joint and use the muscles that work to stabilize and move that joint. Okay, and that's the function mechanism of how it works to increase the mobility. So before we even start, two things that I need to point out. First, when you put your hand on whatever surface you're using, you have to extend your fingers all the way, because it activates the extensors of the forearm. Okay, and that is absolutely important. And then when you actually contact the surface, when you're balancing, okay, if this is my surface, when you contact it, you're going to be moving around. Your arm will be, okay, as you're balancing. So you will move in and out of using your flexors and extensors. Okay, so that is how it actually works. Okay, to do that, you have to make sure you spread your fingers out and grip the ground or whatever surface you're on. Okay, so that is the first key to progress into doing this. I would suggest getting a surface, and you can start as high as you want. You could do it on a counter that you could just lean over and put your elbow into and start to feel how it feels to put weight onto your elbow, and then progress with lower and lower surfaces. Okay, so I have this bench here, and this could be like maybe a mid-level surface before you start doing it on the ground fully. Okay, but as we do it, you can progress the intensity of the movement by slowly bringing your feet out until they're off the ground, like farther away from your point of balance, which is your hands. Okay, so grab your surface. Remember, spread those fingers out. Try to aim to have your elbow in the middle of your stomach. It won't go all the way, and it takes some practice to get used to that, but try your best. Okay, and then you can just start to lean over, and progressively you can use this hand to balance. That's totally okay. Okay, you can start to move your feet back more, lean, so you're slowly putting more weight onto your elbow until you can lift up off your feet off the ground, and then you can actually do the balancing. Okay, so that's how you progress in the levels. Okay, and I should say the maybe most advanced of that would be balancing with your feet off the ground and your body as level as possible. Okay, so it doesn't matter too much for mobility if your legs are apart or together, okay? But I would say maybe it's harder with your legs together, so if you want that, you can try that, okay? Or you can do apart, doesn't really matter, okay? And you can see how I move. Okay? But all of that balancing is the key. That's what you want. And the more you do it, the more you'll get used to moving your wrist around and making up for that balance with how you center over your wrist, okay? And that works all of the muscles that are necessary to increase the mobility of your wrist, okay? So after you can balance, then how do you increase intensity? Well, learn some kind of movement where you're going to use that and go in and out of using it, and even for even more intensity, doing it quickly so that you're forced neurologically basically to be able to perform fast. So the way I learned how to do this and increase my mobility was learning the windmill. Okay, so as I would come around on my back, and you can search what a windmill looks like. So I would roll around onto my back and go back onto that position. I would start in, roll around, and catch back. So I'd have to catch and then stabilize really quickly so that I could then continue the movement. Okay, so I was having to get to that position and catch and make sure that I didn't fall off my elbow or anything like that quickly. So the actual performance of that, as far as the muscles are concerned, and then the neurological performance of that, so like my mind-muscle connection, if you want to call it that, all of that made me learn it quick and better, okay? So obviously this can be done on both sides, and when you get pretty good, see if you can just do it on the ground and give it a try. Let me know how it goes. I'm Master Hogan. This is the elbow lever for wrist mobility. Take care.